Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our latest enablement webinar on what is officially the last day of winter here in the UK. For those of you that weren't aware, my son reliably informed me of that this morning. So hopefully warmer climates are on the way for everyone, wherever you are. We have some excellent speakers lined up today for our latest webinar, The Impact of Sight Loss. How could you best support an employee? My name is Andy Rigby, and I am one of the enablement leads here at Posturite, our division that helps many organisations with neurodiversity and disability assessments and workplace solutions throughout both the UK and globally. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our speakers. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available to listen again via our website, where all the webinars are located, including the slides. If you haven't already, please do have a look at our previous webinars over recent months at posturite.co.uk/webinars. There are some excellent speakers with some really good, interesting content to listen to, from DSE processes to menopause, hearing loss, to managing ADHD in the workplace, and many, many more. Hopefully very useful to go and have a look and listen back. We can also share some very exciting news whilst I've got the platform, that we are going back on the road in May and bringing our Posturite roadshows back to London at the Law Society on the 14th of May and Salford Quays on the 21st of May at the Imperial War Museum. So a lot more information to follow. So keep a lookout for any information on our website and via email, which will come out in the coming days and weeks. But please do put one of those dates in the diary, and hopefully you can join us there in person. There are opportunities to ask questions today in the Q&A box that should be visible on your screen. If you can keep them to the Q&A box rather than the chat box, feel free to say hello to everyone in the chat box, but send the questions through to the Q&A box. Please be aware that your questions will be visible to everyone, and individuals can vote on questions submitted, which will bring them closer to the top of the list for me to ask the panelists. So please do get involved. For accessibility, Zoom supports live captioning. This can be activated and deactivated within your account settings under the meeting tab. Click automated captions to enable or disable this. So to our webinar. The subjects of sight loss and the different types of sight loss can be difficult and very emotional, and emphasising that support is out there to both individuals and employers is a real key message of ours today. We are delighted to be joined by David Mitchell, our Enablement Account Manager, and Andrew Sherman, the Assistive Technology Senior Service Manager from the Home Office. David, whom many of you will know, joined Posturite in 2022 and has over 20 years of experience working as an assistive technology provider, implementing many technology solutions for individuals with disabilities and spreading valuable awareness of both neurodiversity and disability in the workplace. Andrew is a civil servant with 24 years experience. His current role is a senior service manager for staff that use assistive technology, providing support to users and their needs. Morning, David. Heard your name and you appeared. There's a powerful quote for those of you that have seen our LinkedIn post of Andrew at the top of the climbing wall. If you haven't seen it, you will see it shortly. I'd encourage you to have a look at it on our LinkedIn page as well. Andrew sent in this quote. I quote, "I love a challenge, as you will see by the indoor climbing wall. Being blind puts obstacles in the way, but there is always a way around them." So some really powerful content to come. But before Andrew's story, I will turn to yourself, David, to take us through the different types of sight loss, how we can best help with this, and how we are working with many clients to support individuals throughout the UK and beyond.
Thanks, Andy. Next slide, please, Tom. So yeah, guys, I thought we'd lay the field and just basically describe what visual impairment is, and just give you a rough idea. We're not going to go too in depth into the different impairments. And the aim of today is to look at how we can support people in workplace with assistive technology solutions, support techniques, things like that. So the aim is to just kind of steer towards that. And then, like we say, we've got Andrew talking later on about his experiences as well with his visual impairment in workplace. So yeah, just to give you a kind of rough idea, visual impairment is the term used to describe a sight loss that cannot be corrected by glasses or contact lenses. To be registered partially sighted, which means you've got a level of sight impairment or moderate. Okay. Registered blind means a severe impairment, where activities rely on using your eyesight, and it becomes more difficult to do the general day-to-day tasks. And we look at that when we're looking at assessing individuals for workplace. Are they able to achieve their standard working duties, or do they need assistance with that? So next slide, please. So we thought we'd put a few stats in as well as we go through, guys, to give you some overview on these. But being told that you've got a visual impairment that can't be treated can be difficult to come to terms with. Often some people go through what they class as bereavement, and it's known that they could really struggle with taking on their disability with their mental state, and it is quite an impact on individuals. And we're going to hear about one of those today, and yeah, it is quite a life-changing experience to be going through. So we're hoping to support individuals with different technologies, different solutions to help them achieve to be able to continue with life in a working environment. There are many different reasons for sight loss. In the UK, the common ones are cataracts, diabetic retinopathy, retinitis pigmentosa, and hemianopia, age-related macular degeneration, and glaucoma. Now, macular degeneration is a more common one, and it's generally affecting people of the age of 55 and over. And we're seeing more and more that we're working later in life to build up that pension pot because of cost of living. So more and more people are getting over those ages and still working and starting to basically acquire these different disabilities. So like I said, what we're aiming to do is to show you what we can do to support individuals when they're working with them. So one of the stats there, in the UK, more than 2 million people are living with sight loss. Of these, around 340,000 are registered as blind or partially sighted. You don't have to be have full sight loss to be registered as blind. It tends to be a certain percentage of loss, and then you'll be registered as blind, where you need more and more support. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is just give you some general, how can we support individuals, just general advice before we go into the support techniques that we can support with as Posturite. So basically, when thinking of a person who is blind or has a vision loss or impairment, how should you approach them? How should you help them on a day-to-day basis, or just in general if you've only just met them? So always identify yourself where you can, yeah. They may not be able to see you, especially if it's a Teams or Zoom call like what we're doing today. They won't necessarily be able to see you, so it's nice to know who's there, who's speaking, etc. If they're walking around and you think they need assistance, ask them, do they need assistance? Listen to their instructions. They'll tell you the assistance they like to have. And often having them guided around by them holding your arm, not the opposite way, you grabbing their arm and pulling them the way you want. Having them guided by them holding your arm, and you basically walk around the obstacles and explain what the obstacles are. We're coming up to a chair, we're coming up to a door where there's steps approaching, how many steps, that kind of thing. And that really can help them where they need it. Always describe things verbally of the environment where you're moving around as well. Especially if you're coming into traffic, things like that, crossing roads, steps into roads, those kind of things. And then basically ensure, if you've got an office building and you're expecting somebody with a visual impairment to come in, ensure the reception staff know how to help individuals, how to guide them around, and know what support you've got for them within the business. Okay. Next one, please. So additionally, if the individual does have a guide dog or a working dog, always advise them where they can take their dog to go. The dog will go on command, okay? And they'll know the times when that's due. So always advise them beforehand where that area is, that they can actually go and take the dog for that time. And then basically, if they've got a guide dog, remember that it's not to be patted or you know, talked to as though it's a pet. It is working while it's got its harness on. And the last thing you want to do is take distractions away from it doing that job, and then it's going to get confused. So try not to pet the dog unless the owner says that you can do that, and that's generally when they'll take the harness off. Allow more time and greater flexibility for things like inductions and training. If the individual's coming in for even interviews, allow extra time for that, for them to be able to find where you are. But then in addition to, go through things with them, allow extra time because it will take a lot longer sometimes. Offer minutes of meetings well in advance. So basically you're providing them before the meeting. They can have that read and understand what's going to be discussed in the meeting. Try and stick to those minutes as well. Going off on a tangent can often confuse things. And then be aware of the environment that they're in while you're having meetings or you're working with them. Sometimes poor lighting can make things worse. Sometimes bright lighting can make things worse as well. So a happy medium. Have things like blinds where you can dim down things often help. And there's things like daylight lamps you can purchase that can help with day-to-day working environments as well. And then basically in general, relax. Don't feel as though you saying things like, do you see what I mean, is going to upset them. Generally, and I did this many, many years ago when I first started. The first person I met who had a visual impairment, I panicked over saying, do you see what I mean, and saying the word see. You'll often find they've got a better sense of humour than you, and they'll often joke about things. So don't take it as a thing to worry about and relax around them. Okay. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview of what we can support with as Posturite services for sight loss. And then basically we'll then move on to some of the technology that's commonly recommended. And there were a lot of questions coming through about the technology, guys. So I'm going to give you a good overview of what's available. And also Andrew later on will talk about what he uses in work as well, given first-hand experience. So we can deliver sight loss assessments, and those are basically where we look at the environment the individual's working in, looking at things like the lighting, looking at the location. What do they generally struggle with day to day where they might need support, certain tools, magnifying products or magnifying software. And we'll basically make judgment on what's best to enable that individual in the working environment. In addition, we offer awareness training on the technology that we supply. It's important that they learn about the technology. I'll talk about it in the software where it makes a massive difference to them learning as quickly as possible, especially if it's a degenerative sight loss, which is going to get worse. But generally, having the training can help them get to grips with things much, much quicker. Remember, the tools are enabling them to do their job. So training is quite important that they learn how to use it. But we also offer what's called impact training. So I mentioned earlier about it being like having a bereavement, the impact of gaining a disability such as sight loss. So we do a one-to-one coping strategy session, helping the individual come to terms with their disability, but also come to terms that actually with all the support that can be given, you can get back into work full time and achieve very, very well. And then we offer things like building and working location audits. We're often asked by a lot of our clients, how can we improve the location? I mentioned about receptions, issues with like steps. They always look like a wall because the colours of the steps are all the same. So by having contrasting colours can make a big difference. So we can come in and audit a building, or we can audit a working location. So if that individual is not going to be in every single room during the time they work for you, like often they won't be in the IT room, that kind of thing, then maybe we just need to audit the locations they'll be frequenting. And we can support with different audits on that. And then there's the assistive technology and training, which we're going to go to as we go through the next slides, guys. There are many, many different types. There's physical products and there's software products, and then obviously training within that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with magnification software, guys, because generally we're approached by individuals saying that my sight's going to deteriorate over time. What's the best solutions to start with? Generally, Microsoft Windows does have magnification. It is good to a certain extent. Once you get to a certain magnification size, it starts to pixelate. And it also doesn't support motion sickness. When you're moving around and navigating around, it doesn't support that by smoothing the images. So we then look at technology software that can really help with those. The two biggest on the market are Zoom Text and Dolphin Supernova. And they're basically called magnifying software. Now, both of them will do magnification. They'll do split screen. They'll do multiple monitors. so you can control on two different screens at once. But they'll also support with larger cursors, larger mouse icon, and things like that, showing you where the cursor is on the screen. And you can also have the magnification in like a little magnifying window, so it's not the whole screen. So if you're working with other individuals, they don't need to see what's being magnified. You can just see the sections that you need. A lot of the products that we're talking about today use keyboard shortcuts, and this is where I'm going to go into when we talk about the next slide, guys, is getting them used to the keyboard shortcuts to control these rather than the mouse takes away that vision need. They can navigate around better with the keyboard, and by learning those keyboard shortcuts, if the sight is to deteriorate, that when we go to the Just Speech software, that is massively important that they know the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, next slide, please. So when we come to the point where they might need the screen being read to them, we look at specialist software. Now, there is, again, within Windows accessibility tools, it will speak menus, it will speak certain text. But again, it's very limited to the amount of information it gives you. And that's called the verbosity. It's the amount of what it talks and tells you when you're in a certain program, that kind of thing, what menus there are, what buttons there are. So we look at specialist software to support that. And again, we've got a similar two products that are large on the market. One you'll see often is JAWS screen reader, and I believe that Andrew uses that, so you'll get a little bit more information on using JAWS. But we also have Dolphin screen reader. It used to be called HEL in the past, now it's just Dolphin screen reader. Both do a very similar job. They basically speak the menus as you navigate around using the keyboard shortcuts. They'll speak what you're doing, they'll speak the text that you're writing, the text that you're reading, but they'll also cope with reading websites if they're accessibility friendly, lockdown PDFs, things like that, that can really help supported by being able to speak all of the menus. Now, if the individual is going to have deteriorating sight, which I mentioned in the last slide, it's important to start with the magnification, move into magnification and speech, then move into screen reading software. And that way, they're learning the keyboard shortcuts for the screen reading software in the end. So by choosing the preferred software, then that's going to be the one they'll take to the best. And then we need to look at things like mobile solutions as well, where we've got speech navigation on those as well. Next slide, please. So just some kind of supporting tools as well. There's a lot of peripherals. I mentioned about daylight lamps. We have high-vis keyboards, which tend to be the more suitable products. I've got here a dual contrast one with the yellow and black. You can pretty much request as many different colours as you can imagine. The item on the left-hand side there is actually a product to use with the Dolphin Supernova. It's got keyboard shortcuts within it that support that software, so you don't have to use comparable keyboard shortcuts. So that's quite a supportive product. But yeah, we can do loads of different types of high-vis products. There are also stickers, so if you've got your own preference of keyboard, you can actually get high-vis stickers to put on your keyboards, or there is actual keyboard covers as well. Next slide, please. And then just to give you a bit of an overview on magnifiers, guys, it's not everybody's preference to use. If you're dealing with a lot of documents, a magnifier that connects into your computer can be useful. They will split screen with the screen magnifying software as well, or you can use multiple monitors, one for the magnifier, one for your software. They pretty much work with each other, but the magnifiers can read documents underneath, or they can read distance, depending on the product, on whiteboards, that kind of thing. We're finding more and more that handheld is not being used because people are using mobiles. However, again, once you get to a certain magnification, the products aren't that good. So you need to look at a specific product. So depending on the need, if they need to navigate around using a handheld, we can get them. And they'll often do things like color change, contrast change, that kind of thing, as well as magnify. Very few will actually speak as well. You get into the high-end cost products there where they can speak the text that you're magnifying, but then it's down to requirements as well. Next slide, please. Okay, and then just a brief cover on Braille devices, guys. Braille support, not everybody who's blind will read Braille. They do get supported to try and learn Braille. It can help when you're navigating around buildings. You've got Braille on lifts, buttons, things like that. But not everybody does use Braille. But where they do, there are products that can support it. On the left-hand side here, we've got a Braille computer with a Braille display. You can see the little white dots at the top. They change as the screen changes on the computer. But also certain individuals who won't read Braille will use a headset and they'll be able to navigate around hearing the voice, so they don't need the screen on this device. Great portable little device. It's very much like a laptop, but designed to support people who have a visual impairment. And on the right-hand side there, I've included a Braille embosser, which is a Braille printer. So you're able to print off Braille and then read the text on a document that you need to read. They can be quite noisy, so if they're being positioned in an office, you can actually buy boxes that cover them as well, because they can be quite noisy, like an old dot matrix printer, if you remember them, guys. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to kind of mention before we move on, the OrCam has come out to support individuals with visual impairment. The OrCam is a great product because not only does it support reading different types of text, which I'll mention in a moment, but it'll also recognise objects as well. So if you're holding money, it will tell you what money you're holding. It can recognise colours. It can recognise individuals' features. So if somebody's approaching you, it will tell you who they are if you program them in. You can even have them say their own name. So it's them speaking when they're approaching you. So yeah, fantastic product. There's new developments coming with this as well, where it's going to be able to recognise and navigate around the buildings, recognise chairs and things like that. So there's many changes coming, and it'll just be an update into the product itself. To basically read text, you literally hold your hand up, point your finger, and it will start to speak the text that's in front of you, whether that's on a screen or whether that's on a document or it's a signage on a wall, it'll start to speak it. And then you hold your hand up to stop, it will stop. So it uses gestures as a way of actually starting to speak the text to you. So it makes it more of an easy tool to use if you have a visual impairment. Next slide, please. And we're moving on now to Andrew, guys.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's great. Appreciate a few questions coming in. Well, obviously, we'll answer the questions at the end. So keep the questions coming, should you wish to. So yeah, thanks, David. That's brilliant insight in terms of the different types of sight loss and how we can a brief overview of this. There's so many options out there, isn't there, in terms of solutions. Gives us a good overview. Andrew, thank you for joining us. Very much appreciate you being part of the webinar today. We've had a lot of really good feedback, and we've had questions come in prior to today as well. So lots of anticipation. I think, firstly, from my point of view, we're hoping you can sort of set the scene for us, really, with a bit of an overview of your background and ultimately your story about sight loss.
All right, cheers, Andy. So I was born in 1975. I was, I suppose, really classed as a kid that used to love going out, doing things. Played a lot of cricket when I was young. Played rugby for the town team. Had a Lancashire cricket trial. So I thought, well, obviously doing quite well. I always wanted to be a car mechanic. That was my dream job after, when I didn't really like electrics, because obviously it's quite dangerous playing with electrics when I was younger. So I always wanted to be a car mechanic. Went off, left school at 16, became a car mechanic. And at the age of 18, I developed a very rare eye condition. Now, the way I found out about this eye condition was I was sat reading one of my mechanics exams, and the writing was literally bouncing up and down. So I thought, oh, must need glasses. So I closed my left eye, it was bouncing up and down my right eye. Closed my right eye, perfectly fine. Then went to see the optician, and he said, oh, that's very strange. We've never seen anything like this before. We'll have to refer you to the eye clinic. So bear in mind, going from being totally sighted, doing everything I was doing, achieving loads of things in life, thinking this is fantastic, to, oh, I might need glasses, which when I was a kid growing up, I always used to put my sister's glasses on because I think glasses look really cool. So I was like, oh, that'll look good. Then it got to a point where the optician didn't know what it was. The doctors, my GP was a bit, no, that's very strange. We've never seen anything like that before. Referred me to an emergency eye clinic in Southport, where I live. And from there, they actually decided that it was going to be a steroid deficiency. So they pumped me with steroids for a while, which obviously is not a great thing to be on. But it turned out within from May the 13th, I was actually registered blind on October the 22nd that same year. So it's a very short turnaround time. But it's the big things that's happened since then. It was a very rare genetic eye condition I developed called Leber's optic neuropathy. And at the time, I was the 77th person in the UK registered with it. Now, that sounds a lot. Well, it doesn't sound a lot of people registered with an eye condition, but when I joined the civil service, which I'll go on to in a minute, there was actually 2 other people with that same eye condition. So it was really, a difficult time to go through. So how did that change my life? Well, if you look at it from being someone that could see, doing everything they want to do, to now what I'm going to do, I've now got to redesign my whole life in a way. That's the way I looked at it. Whenever I do these type of things, I talk about having 2 lives. I've had a sighted life, and now I've got a life where I can't see. So now I look at, well, how do I rehabilitate myself? So I went to a place called Christopher Grange in Liverpool, it was actually run by people that were nuns, but it was all with people there that assisted people that have recently gone blind, or older people that are going blind through later in life. And it teaches them how to do the basic living skills. So the starting of how to type when you can't see, how to learn to use Braille, and then how to do the simple things that we all take for granted, how to make a cup of tea. Now, they give you a little device that you sit on the edge of the cup. It's got 2 prongs. When the water gets to that level, it beeps and it tells you to stop pouring water. When you get more and more used to it, you put your finger inside of the cup and carry on pouring until your finger gets hot, and then you pull your finger out. So it's all that type of thing that you change. But it's all about those independent living skills then. How do you build the confidence up to start traveling? Well, that's where I had to start using a white stick. Now, for myself to go from everybody knew me because my family and everybody around the area that I lived in suddenly seeing me using a white stick. Now, I had to swallow a lot of pride there because I didn't like to. But now I travel all around the country for the job. I've met like Andy and Dave down in London. I just go around London using a white stick. I've had 2 guide dogs over the years. Unfortunately, I had to retire the first one. He got cancer. But it's all about, and it's like I put in the thing there about obstacles get in the way, but it's make it a challenge to get around those obstacles. So all I wanted to do was get back into employment, and I was always looking at how to get into employment. I went off to a college to get some qualifications down in Hereford. Now, this is it's a college called Royal National College for the Blind. Give it a bit of a plug there. Now, that's set up for people who have recently gone blind, or it's further education for people that have left like schools and then they've gone there. Now, I learned a lot there because I've gone from a sighted world into then I'm literally surrounded by people with guide dogs, white sticks everywhere. They actually had their own bar called the White Sticks. Now, that was such an education to me about life, being a visually impaired person. It helped me so much. And then once I'd left there with qualifications, I got a GMVQ in business and finance. I did a bit of sports therapy, massage whilst I was there. But it gives you that aim in life, and it gives you that, well, I can do something now. So then I started applying for jobs. Now, applying for jobs, I thought, oh, that should be quite easy. You could fill an application form in. But filling an application form in when you're using a screen reader can actually be quite difficult. Some of the forms you get, it'd say fill in the grey shaded area. Now, a screen reader won't read out that it's got a grey shaded area on the screen. I won't be able to see that grey shaded area either, but it's then looking outside that box to ask them for assistance. So if you're filling an application form out, at the bottom of the form, it will give you a link to the company or the people that provide that application form. And you would discuss with them then how to complete the application form because it's not accessible. So moving further down the line of jobs, once I started working for the civil service back in 2000, I think I've done, well, I couldn't count the amount of roles I've done. I've always wanted to achieve, and I've always wanted to get on as best I can. So I've started off doing the basic of admin tasks. I was taking meeting notes, providing agendas and all things like that, but it wasn't giving me that sense of achievement that I really wanted. So I was always looking to what I could do better. How could I better myself? Then I started working on a health and safety team. That was going out with the guys doing all the health and safety risk assessments. So that's given me a greater understanding then of what I can use the software for as well. So I'm learning, like Dave was saying before, about learning how to use the keystrokes. Now, constantly learning, constantly evolving my knowledge of the software made me think, well, what can I do next? And that's where I moved along into a diversity inclusion role. And then I've developed myself and looked, and I feel quite proud that I've been able to progress through the civil service to go up 4 grades. Now, that might not mean a lot to a lot of people, but when you're doing that through the civil service, it's not difficult, but if you can get into the right sense of the area, you can progress and progress and progress. Now, when I was talking to Dave earlier on, I was like looking at different things. I was thinking, I sat letting Dave do his presentation. I thought, hang on a minute, you should actually be quite proud of what you've done and what you've achieved over those years. So when we talk about software and when we're talking about how you would use it, like Dave was mentioning there, for me to use my screen reader, currently we do a lot with Microsoft and we do a lot with other government departments. So we share best practice. So if someone is finding a problem in an area, we will actually work together to get that solution put in place, working with these external organizations.
Fantastic. I think it's fascinating and everyone's hooked on the story, Andrew. Appreciate that. There's a few things I've taken out of that I'll probe a little bit more if that's okay. It's just in sense, if we go back to when you were actually looking for work and you talked about the application process and the challenges around that. Was that the biggest challenge you feel when you were trying to find employment? Was that sort of onboarding or before then is the application process? And probably another part to that question is, do you feel that's progressed since you were finding employment back in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, it was also about finding what job that you feel you'd be suitable for, because obviously it's not that it restricts you in the job, because the organization you'll go into will always find adaptations and work around. They'll work with like Posturite, for example. They'll work with the other organizations to support you within that job role. But if you always want to make sure that you can do a full job, end-to-end job. And that's where I've always looked at, well, could I do that job role? Yes, I could. What support would I need? So I think it's where we're talking about the challenges there, or what's the biggest obstacles. I think it was understanding what I could do. And once I knew what I could do, I could go off and then achieve extra things. But I think it's the application process has got so much better now. A lot more, especially government departments, are understanding accessibility a lot more. A lot of external organizations, because I do look at a lot of other job roles just for knowledge and understanding, but the accessibility now in the last, I know it's 20 years, but it's changed so much and it's got a lot better. Technology has got so much more usable. It's got so much more, works with the other products a lot better. So I think, in answer to your question, Andy, yeah, I think it has got so much better through the years as well.
Yeah, that's great, and I think you're right. I think with awareness, obviously, technology is evolving every day, isn't it? And we hear of so much coming onto the market every single day, particularly these days with the introduction of AI and Chat GPT, which frightens the life out of all of us, doesn't it? But it has evolved, and we do see that. Just keeping on that same period, Andrew, if it's okay, if you were going back to speak to 18-year-old Andrew, what would you say to him at the start, right at the start of that journey?
Well, once we discussed that before, Andy, I was sat there on the side thinking, well, what could I come back with? And I said to David, I just went, dream, believe, achieve. Because if you dream something can be done, that something's been put in your way, well, you can get around it, well, achieve it, and then you've done something and you've believed in what you can do. And I think it's not me being big-headed when I say that. I look at a lot of friends of mine that are, because I've still got a great big group of people that are blind or visually impaired. When I see what they're doing with their lives, it's about going out and achieving something. Just because someone said, "I'm going to make you've lost a lot of your sight," or it's not easy to get through, but you can do things and you can make yourself have that massive sense of achievement by the end of it. So it's just working through those problems. Getting that sense of group of people around you, find out people that are going through a similar process to yourself.
Brilliant. And you've certainly done that, Andrew. I think one other thing I took out of your story is you mentioned a sense of achievement as well within your job role. And obviously that's important for everyone. And by that I do mean everyone, that everybody does need that sense of achievement within their job role, and finding that over the time is from a mental health point of view above everything is significant, isn't it? So yeah, you've certainly done that in terms of achievement. Just touching on support, Andrew, if you can, if there's anything that you're currently doing in terms of support. You've mentioned friends that you have that have got sight loss as well. What's your role within that from a support point of view, or is there ways that you can pass on your experience to those types of people?
Yeah, I mean, within the civil service, obviously people will start to lose the sight as they're getting older, that type of thing. But we've had a few cases whereby staff have actually lost the sight, whether at a younger age, but quite rapidly. Now, because that similar thing happened to me, I've been able to help and support them and point them in the right direction. When I say by point them in the right direction, I don't just mean it's over there like we were joking about before with Dave and saying, you know, say the right things, but it's about giving them the understanding of the support that's out there. I'm a big believer in speaking to people and have that conversation with them, explain what I've gone through, explain what friends of mine have gone through, and they can look at it then and go, well, okay, I can do that. Well, I could do that. Help them get through that journey. And it is a journey in a way, because you're going through something that's an unknown. Nobody knows that it's going to happen to them unless unless it's genetically already in them. So it's understanding where you're going, help them go along that road successfully, point out the support that's out there for them. Try and talk to them, and that's the best way I can do it. It's speak to the person, find out about the person. Don't think that you can take it for granted that it's the same for everybody. Like I mentioned before, I met two people in the civil service that got the same eye condition as me. Mine was totally different to theirs, and it's all about that understanding as well for them.
Fantastic. And probably just to develop that question and flip it the other way in terms of colleagues and how colleagues can support people with sight loss, particularly when maybe it's newly acquired, and you know that is a difficult challenge, I think, for for colleagues.
Yeah.
Is there any advice on terms of how colleagues can support individuals as well?
Yeah, I think it's certainly, as I was saying about talking to somebody, it's not reliant on Uncle Google, because he will give you an answer there that won't be the beneficial to the end user. But it's about understanding how the support's going to be there for that person. Speak to people like R&I Base, speak to people like Posturite. There's loads of other organisations out there to get that understanding. You could even bring people in to do awareness sessions with the team. So we've done it. I mean, within the civil service, we do like this webinars where we'll discuss visual impairment, we'll discuss all the other disabilities, but it's so it gives awareness to those members of staff that are out there. But then it'll be understanding and talking to that person. And don't ever be afraid to ask the person who has gone blind or is going blind, how can we help you? What is it you need from us to help you with your job role? Or what is it you need us to do from the moment you come into the building to the moment you leave the building? It might just be something as simple as to, an example, the other week I was looking at a new computer program and I was messing about then. I thought, I just can't get to where I need to get to. And the person that was helping me went, just click there. And it's that click there doesn't help. So if they explain to them then, right, my software works like this, take the headsets out, let them listen to it. They then get the understanding of how you work with that screen reader. So you don't use the mouse, you use the keystrokes, you use the tab key, you use combinations of keys. So you will go to that button. If it's not labeled as a button, for example, you can't just navigate to it with a keystroke. So it's them understanding how that person would work compared to how Dave would work using the mouse. So I think that's the good way there, is getting an understanding as well of that person's job, the job role, how they work with the software and technology they use, compared to how a sighted colleague would do it. When I first joined, when I was in an area where we dealt with claims and things like that, I actually had a buddy that sat with me. So they learned how I worked, which give them a greater understanding. So if I had a problem, they could just go, okay, what you need to do is do this. And they showed me how to do it with the keyboard rather than just doing it all by the mouse. So it's that understanding as well.
Yeah, that's great. I've got a question. I appreciate people are firing questions in, which is great, and I'll come to those now. We've had a lot of conversation over the last few years. Obviously, our working patterns have changed through the COVID period. That the general consensus is, some people may do 2-3 days in the office. Some people may do 2-3 days at home, vice versa. And what we found is that a lot of people pre-COVID develop coping strategies relating to a disability, and then suddenly people are working from home, and they needed to realign and find new coping strategies, because potentially, as you mentioned, then you may have colleagues that may assist in certain areas, or just a way of working. Is that something that you found, Andrew, in terms of that sort of change of working pattern, and any messages really around hybrid working in that sense?
I was desperate to get back to the office. I could not stand working from home. That's my honest opinion. It might be strange to a lot of people, but currently I live 7 minutes walk from my office, so I can do from my front door to my desk in 8 minutes. I'm very, very lucky for that. If I had to go on public transport all the time, I used to travel an hour and a half to each the office. I now look back and go, would I do that? Yeah, I would, because I love the interaction with people. To me, that is so much, I get so much more out of a day's work by that interaction in the office. The coping strategies behind all that, obviously, when we were going through that period of lockdowns, etc., or where we were trying to come out of lockdowns, the things to me that I struggled with was when being ignored in shops. So you go into a shop, you join a queue, you'd stand back, but being visually impaired, you couldn't see where the lines were on the floor. So getting into queues and things like that, I know it's going off the subject slightly because it's not a coping strategy, but that to me was how I coped with that. I was feeling isolated as a person, but I was the type of person that walked into Spa, for example, and I'd just shout, "Could I have some assistance?" Now, it wasn't being rude, but that's how I coped with getting around those problems. Now, to me, that goes back to what I was saying earlier on. It's another challenge. Now, that period that we all went through as a country made it a bigger challenge for somebody with visual impairment or another type of disability, because they were putting obstacles in the way that made it difficult for us. But coming back into the office, I've got my own desk and I sit at that desk. So we all have to book desks when we come in. So nobody books that desk because they know I know where it is in the office. So, for example, if I'm off for a week, I'll tell somebody, look, if you need to sit there, sit there. But obviously, when I'm coming back, that's it. It's my desk. So that's the way we get around it. But it's different. People prefer it a different way, and I prefer being in the office. Some colleagues prefer working from home, but it's just my way. I prefer to be around people.
Fantastic. We do have a few questions around the assistive technology as well. So it may be either for yourself and for David as well. David, this is probably one for you, because you went through quite a few, or a sort of snapshot of some assistive technology and what solutions are out there. There is a question around that sort of seems to focus on Windows. Is there any advice in terms of Mac users, iPhone, Android, for similar solutions? Basically supporting people with VI for more units, for more systems.
Yeah, there is actually. We've got a document that we can share if anybody wants to reach out and ask for that. It tells you all the accessibility tools in Windows, Apple, Mac, and the mobile devices. Actually, Apple devices are more accessible than Windows. They've spent many years since they were developing them to have them accessible, such as tactile, tiles when you're using the iPads. So as you're feeling around, the iPad will vibrate when you hit one of the tiles, so you know that that's a button to press. then it will speak what it is. So the accessibility tools in Apple are much more advanced than Windows, because obviously Windows, the platforms for the tablets are many, many different variations, not specific to that company. But yeah, we've got a document we can share if anybody wants to reach out and ask us for that.
That's great. And on the same theme, does the assistive technology stay the same, or is it subject to regular updates and improvements?
Do you want me to come on that?
Yeah, you go on.
Yeah. So just to slightly jump back, Andy, on that question about Apple devices there. Now, a big thing for me years ago when I first started using a mobile phone, you could everything was like, for example, the company's Nokia, where there were tactile buttons. Now, you could send your phone off to a company that provided software that installed a product called Talks, so it read back to you. Now, then someone said to me, well, Apple products, they have it built in. Now it's called VoiceOver. I never thought I would be able to use a touchscreen device, yet alone go on Amazon and order Christmas presents, go on eBay, buy things. Now, with that technology that you've got built into Apple products, you're able to do that. So I think that's something that is totally, it blows my mind when I think to what people can do on the phones. So the question there about, does it get better and better? Yes, it does. Each year, Apple, for example, it's not a plug for Apple list, will update their Mac engines and things that get better and better. Zoom Text and Jaws that Dave was mentioning, Dolphin before, they are constantly evolving their products to run in line with Windows 10, for example, when they were moved in. Now Windows 11, when we're all catching up, those products are getting better and better all the time. And working with Microsoft, for example, it all aligns together.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great to know. And on that, we have had a question about, do you offer training on assistive technology? I'll give you 20 seconds off. Guys say, yeah, we do. I mean, any of the software assistive technology, Posturite do provide assistive technology. We provide the training on the back of that as well. Don't we, guys? Really, it's the key part of the whole process, isn't it, to ensure that people are aware of how to use the assistive technology and more importantly, why it's been recommended for them to develop those coping strategies and overcome any specific barriers. We've had a question from Claire, which really appreciate, from the RNIB. Just in terms of compatibility issues with assistive technology. People have the tools to do the job, but the systems that are brought in aren't accessible, and issues around compatibility. Do you find this, and probably the next step of it, are there any sort of obvious solutions to put in place when this happens?
So, to me, yeah. So we do a lot of work within the civil service with, especially for screen reader users, for example, where they can't navigate around the system. We'll go externally, and we will bring in other companies such as Blazy, who are a scripting solution. Now they can provide the quickest and easiest way to describe it is they will write a script which will give the JAWS user a way to be able to navigate around the screen, and they'll do that by giving it a key combination, which will bring up menus and things like that to be able to navigate around. So there's lots of ways around making things accessible, but everything really in a realistic world should be accessible by default.
There is also tools that you can get to make products accessible, such as websites and stuff. We're beginning to get better at doing that over in the UK, and I believe it's going to become law eventually that everything has to be accessible if it's going on the web. So yeah, we're moving in the right direction. There are companies that can do all that for them if they don't have the expertise. But yeah, there's even software you can plug into your website that will make it accessible. So yeah, there's two ways around it. One is the individuals developing should be more aware and making them more accessible, but also then there are tools that can make back office systems that have been around for years and don't really work more accessible, such as having the scripting and stuff.
That's great. And that's the sense. There is a question around online forms and making sure that online forms, obviously, I think the way the technology is going, everything's online now, isn't it? And you know, us ourselves in terms of our referral forms, etc., we want it to be online because that's generally how the market's going. Is that the same response really for how do we check online forms that are compatible for use with assistive technology?
Yeah, so you can actually use JAWS itself to test if any software is accessible. Even utilizing people such as Andrew can just quickly check this is accessible, because that's the be all and end all. It's going to be that kind of product that needs to be, have that website readable, that form readable with that piece of software. Once it can do that, it becomes an accessible tool. So yeah, it's all about testing it and getting people involved where you can. But using the software that they're going to use to access it is the key thing.
Yeah. But on the back of that, it's all about the web content accessibility guidelines, which are the standards that people should be adhering to when they're creating the web, the websites, the pages, the products that they're designing should all be adhered to those standards.
That's great. There's a question about LED lighting. New LED lighting seems to become an issue as it is quite bright. Are there any recommendations?
So what we would generally do when we do recommendations is look at the daylight lamps, things like that, rather than LED lighting. The issue is you're getting buildings using LED because it's cheaper on electric. So yeah, it's the type of LED. You've got the bright white and then you've got the blue color, haven't you? So yeah, it's a difficult one. We would generally look at the daylight bulbs where possible, which you can get. But again, it's down to cost savings to outweigh the actual requirements.
That's great. Yeah, so we'll fight through as many as we can if that's okay. So Naomi's put really good question. A lot of people are aware of white sticks linked to visual impairment. Are there other ways of showing to others that you are visually impaired that we should be aware of if someone doesn't use a white stick?
Oh gosh, that's a good.
That's a
Very good question.
What a badge. Terrible. No,
I mean, it's not always a long white stick that people wave in front and left to right. It's people often use a cymbal cane, which is probably about 2 foot long, where they may carry alongside them that if they get in, they need any assistance, they can just use that to identify that someone's visually impaired. I don't know, because I've always known guide dogs or white sticks, you see. So I mean, it's that's the main things that would identify that someone's got a visual impairment, unless obviously you don't mind announcing it that you're walking down the street and you need assistance. That's when you would say to someone, "Oh, could you just give me assistance?"
Fantastic. There's a question around Dragon. So Dragon is, I'm sure everyone's aware of Dragon, it being a speech-to-text device, voice-activated software. Any speech-to-text device software better than Dragon? That's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the question. So I suppose, I mean, in terms of alternatives, there's always alternatives to anything, isn't there? But specifically around voice-activated software, what's your thoughts on the sort of better ones? Or the most recommended on the market, the ones that you potentially get the best feedback from?
So for me, Dragon, it's basically been Dragon's business to be speech to text, and being able to navigate around using your voice. All of the others are kind of, trying to catch up with that, but they're using Microsoft technology to do that. Microsoft isn't quite there, which is why Microsoft bought Nuance a couple of years back. We've eventually think that it will become part of Windows as a product because it's owned by Microsoft. But it is the market leader, it is the one that can do what you need it to do. A lot of people have issues with it because they don't know how to use it right. They don't realize that if you go using it in a busy office and then you use the same profile at home, the sound is completely different. Your microphone's expecting a different sound. There might be aircon in the busy office, might be people around you. So it won't work as well. What you've got to do then is have 2 profiles. So it's knowing how to use the product best, you get the best out of the product is a key thing. So
fantastic. Just a development on the identification in terms of those not using white sticks. Appreciate a couple of comments of lanyards, potentially lanyards. The RDA use a white armband to identify visually impaired. So there are a few out there to identify. So yeah, appreciate those comments to add to that. We have a couple of questions, probably more around sort of day-to-day solutions, really. Where can you get coloured lenses of a specific colour for those that need it? Opticians have not got a range. That's one of the questions we've had in terms of coloured lenses. It may be a difficult one to answer. Obviously, from a workplace point of view, there are solutions out there in terms of coloured screens, aren't there? Which are very popular, software and colour overlays, etc. Not too sure whether we can answer the question around the lenses. If you guys,
I think certain opticians can do them, but you can go online and put your red, green, and blue numbers in. So you can order them to your specific requirements. I would think it would be an online purchase rather than going into your local opticians. Like you said, they will have a limitation.
Yeah, fantastic. And any advice for driving jobs at night, given the too bright headlights of new cars?
So those, this is becoming quite common. So basically, it's using the yellow glasses, dim down those brightness. You can actually purchase specific night driving glasses that dim it down. So it's becoming quite common that a lot of the latest light bulbs, LED bulbs on cars are much brighter, and they're causing that glare. When you've got even just a slight loss, I need glasses to drive myself, and the minute it gets to around the time where it's kind of getting to dusk and it's getting darker, I start to see glare more than anything, and I need to make sure I've got them on. But once it gets to the point where it's really dark, that glare is really prominent. So there are night vision glasses you can get that help dim that down.
Fantastic. Quite a few comments on access to work, and we generally get quite a lot of questions on access to work. And there is a question in the chat about do Posturite work with the access to work program. The answer is absolutely yes. We do provide a lot of the recommendations on the back of an access to work assessment, and we work directly with a lot of access to work assessors in terms of product training, price lists, etc. So I would suggest, obviously, with everyone potentially has a different relationship with access to work in how it's utilised. But I would encourage anyone to reach out to us in terms of speaking directly about the Access to Work program and how Posturite can assist with that. We work with many organisations where we put processes in place to ultimately get the reasonable adjustments in place for an individual as quickly as possible, which is obviously the key part of the whole program. So I'd happily welcome anyone. Anyone can get in touch with myself or direct via the Posturite email addresses and enablement@posturite.co.uk. So more than happy to help in that sense. I'll just have another couple of chats because I'm aware of time. We are almost up. Here's one, Andrew. You can finish this one off. In the civil service, do you have guide dog policies to manage health and safety?
Yeah, wherever there's an end user that's got, for example, when I had my first guide dog, the guide dogs came out and put a specific spending area for the dog. So that was all put up by them. And if you moved an office, they put that wherever you were going to. Guide dogs work very closely with organisations as well to make sure that you are going to get that support. They'll come out and do routes with you. They'll come out and do the spending area with you, and they'll even do like presentations for guys and girls in work to make sure that they're not coming over and fussing the dog at the right time. For example, my guide dog, when I used to take the lead and harness off it, it didn't sit by my desk. It went about 6-7 desks away and went and sat by another lady because he got biscuits off them. So it's things like that. It's making sure that all appropriate stuff's in place.
Fantastic. There are a few sort of specific questions, and we 100% will get back to everyone that has asked a question. I'll probably finish on this one if that's okay, Dave. This may be one for you from Nicola. Do the courses offered by Posturite consider visually impaired, and can this be built in easily?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I can, sorry. Do the courses offered by Posturite consider the visually impaired, and can this be built in easily?
We don't do courses specific. We do awareness training, but at the moment we don't do courses specifically. But it's just general awareness training around visual impairment.
It may be around, apologies if I've interpreted it wrong as well, it may be around the sort of the delegates as well, in terms of visually impaired delegates that may be on any of our training courses. Obviously, we do a lot of DSE assessor awareness courses. You've got your neurodiversity awareness course. It's probably a little bit advised really in terms of any visually impaired delegates that may attend.
Yeah, yeah, we do basically we do adjustments every time we deliver a course. So we ask if anybody has any further requirements. Things like, delivering this today, we'll offer a pre-copy of the actual presentation that is accessible, so it can be read beforehand, giving them as much information, but then also giving extra time during the sessions that you're delivering, and making everybody else aware. There might be somebody online who's got a visual impairment. Make sure that you're introducing yourself and getting involved wherever it's accessible for them.
Amazing. I'm aware of the time, so that we'll conclude it there. For those that have sent questions in prior to today and today, as I say, we will get back to you. I firstly want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. There's a lot of nice comments in the chat as well, guys, which I'm sure you can have a look at after the webinar. So I appreciate everyone's feedback. I also want to thank yourself, David, and Andrew, for your time in today. Really informative session and gone really sort of big step in creating a lot of awareness around sight loss. So thank you to everyone involved. Thank you, guys.
You.
Thank you.